Welcome to Dre and Smiley, the Inner Circle podcast. We have another great guest on for you guys today.
Hey Dre, man, you know what? I'm part of a board called the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, and about a month and a half ago, we had a breakfast fundraiser, and several of us board members were there. And what we had to do is sit down at different tables so we could meet the people and speak with different representatives who came to our event. Well, I had the most fortunate opportunity of selecting the best table in the breakfast luncheon because I had the pleasure of sitting next to Tasha Curry. And she's on our podcast this morning, and I'm so happy to have Tasha here.
All right.
Tasha, before we begin, I'm going to read your bio. It was just fascinating talking to her during this fundraiser, but Tasha is a spokesmodel turned advocate. Tasha was on the ground when big hitters like Coke Zero and Gillette Venus dropped. She's a quick study on how to best showcase a legendary brand, but prefers to champion the underdog, the brands that aren't so visible. A few short stints in the local newsroom reminded her that her voice holds that power. As an adoptee herself, she made a sharp turn towards child welfare and spent years speaking on behalf of hundreds of kids in need. After jumping the ranks into several administrative teams, she not only saw the best and the worst of public system management in a top three market, but helped to raise millions for a variety of causes. Along the way, she was published in a small international femme-forward anthology to speak her own truth on trauma-informed healing. Currently, she's a PR consultant for community-centric nonprofits. Outside the office, Ms. Curry is a divorced single mom of three kids. She recently moved from the American Midwest to the Deep South. She writes weekly about her wins and many losses, navigating the social constructs we call life for her virtual colleagues on LinkedIn. She wishes she had more time to hike, but now is happy to be considered a guest on the Dre and Smiley. We are happy to have you on the guest on the Dre and Smiley. So,
Oh, that was a
so
lovely introduction. Smiley?
Oh, well, no, thank you. That was well written. So please, there was so much there. I don't know when to begin, but I want to jump right to the heart of it. What is
Yeah.
a fem forward anthology? That sounds so powerful.
Oh, and it's so powerful that you can't eat it all in a week, right? You can't take this anthology, right? All of these pages, all of these women's stories and just rush through it in a day. It's not one of those reads. What it is it's a collection of stories of women all across the globe who have connected with this little publisher, Girl God Books, right? It says everything
Okay.
in the name. It is powerful. Gods, goddesses, us emulating from a place where we're sharing our stories, our triumphs, our horrors, and really we're talking about our trauma, right? Things perpetuated as women in the world today and throughout time and history, and how it impacted us. And we are sharing our words in terms of allowing ourselves to heal. And I hope that at some point in the future, for whatever women are reading it, and some have already reached out and been like, "You're so brave," and I'm like, "Or stupid," but I've shared this piece. It was actually a poem, a 2-page poem, prose, about assault that I faced when I was around 19 years old. And it was devastating to go through and just have that at the brink of my college career be how I entered the world post teenagehood, right? And it stuck with me for a really long time. As I started to process my feelings for that as a woman in this position, I got the words out on paper through many years of therapy, but at the same time through my own way in order to put those words somewhere and let them be there. Um,
Mm.
I had been following Girl God Books for a few years and knew that I wanted to be published in one of their pieces. Just knew it. And it was about 2 years, and there was a request for submission for, healing the patriarchal trauma. And I thought, oh God, this is it. And the piece that I'm going to choose is the piece that I likely would not put anywhere. It's very private. It's intimate. It's not something that people talk about. It's crazy taboo. Sexual assault probably happens to anywhere between 1 and 2 out of 4 women across the globe, and people still can barely say the words. So I was like, this is it. This is the piece I'm putting in there. And it found itself at the end of the first chapter. So I helped to open the book. And yeah, it was a powerful experience. I still cannot even believe I am published, Smiley. It still blows my mind sometimes.
Well, congratulations and thanks for sharing your bravery and courage for sharing your story. As a father of a daughter, that's a nightmare. And what would you recommend for fathers who have young girls who've been protected all their lives and they're getting ready to go out into this world of crazy college life where there's alcohol, there's young people, there's testosterone. It's like that's one of my biggest nightmares. It's like, do I teach her how to shoot a gun? Do I put her in boxing, or what do I do to protect her
Okay,
Well,
when she's thousands of pounds
I've
of?
opted for security force. I've hired 5 guys with 5 guys with AR-15s to follow her everywhere she goes. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a good move? Yes, no? What do you think?
here's the thing. I have discussions about this all the time with my kids, not just issues of social impact and social change, how we regulate ourselves emotionally. I have 1 son and 2 daughters, right? 14, 9, and 3. So I've got the span. And we have these discussions all the time. The discussions weren't always had in my household, right? I grew up in a Catholic household, very conventional, very traditional. These discussions were not had. I find as a parent, it is more powerful to have these discussions so that you're the first person who's giving them the opportunity to ask questions and all the things that they may not feel empowered enough to ask their friends. But have the discussions, right? Have the discussion not only of how unthoughtful and scary and terrifying the world can be, but also how powerful they are, right? Their ability to make decisions that they at any point in time have an opportunity to say yes, to say no. Even if they feel that they are out of control of the situation, they always have an opportunity to say yes to how they manage it, how they respond. So we have talked about the other day, I'm considering starting my own business. Okay. And I was talking to him about how not too long ago, back in the 70s, women weren't even allowed to have bank accounts, right? We just weren't. Can you imagine? Like, I wouldn't have been able to even get a divorce back in the 70s, let alone now, with no means to actually post myself up somewhere or make the drive across country, right? Without just cash in my pocket. And the look on my son's face, like, wow, what? Those aren't things that he's talking about in school right now, but does he need to know? Yeah. And does he need to understand how these things can really affect people? Absolutely. So having the discussion with your children, especially your girls, is ginormous. You can, Dre, you can put the security team around her all you want.
Thank you.
Right, you can set her up in college in a penthouse somewhere and keep the gates up, but like Rapunzel, she's gonna let that hair down, and at some point,
That's right.
she's gonna decide she's ready to go out. Okay, and unfortunately, my situation wasn't just a single sexual assault; it was actually gang rape. And again, that's another word that you can't necessarily say all of the time. And you may have to bleep this out. I know this is a clean show, but it was a situation that shouldn't have happened. And situations like that are going to happen, not necessarily sexual assault, but where they run into things that they don't have control over, but they will have control over how they respond to it and how empowered they feel to do something about it. When I was that age, 19, I was not empowered to do anything about it. I kind of got paralyzed in that trauma, right? Because we all have a response. We can fight, flight, faint, right? That's one thing that can happen, or like fawn, right? And unfortunately, my response during that time was fawn. It was a blackout. So after that, I didn't feel like I had enough in order to stand up for myself or ask the questions that I needed to or say the things that I needed to. It wasn't until, say, 10 years later that I felt like, oh man, I've got the pieces now. And what I had left to do with it was to write this piece and put those words on paper. And to be honest, it may make sense. I don't know what age your daughters are, but give them the anthology. Let them read those stories. Because even if they haven't faced some of the stories that the women in the anthology have, what they're going to feel is empowered. What they're going to feel is no matter what comes my way, I'm going to make it through and I'm going to be fine because I have the choice to make another step after whatever happens goes down.
I love that. I love that. There's so many layers to everything you've shared.
Whew. Yeah.
I've heard so many people say that, art can be therapeutic.
Oh, gosh.
Clearly, it has been in your case. For the writing that you published, where can our listeners, those viewing this podcast as well, where can they find that?
Sure. I think I had put it on, well, there's a couple places. First, LinkedIn. I write weekly. I love to share my stories about my kiddos, about myself. Hopefully I can start to get on more hikes and take you all with me out in the great area of Tampa, which is just stunning. And second, girlgodbooks.com, right, is to go and check out that anthology. It's called Remembering with Goddess, right? Becoming a member of a women's tribal group, right? Sticking together and sharing our stories with our unique experiences. Remembering with Goddess, absolutely check it out. They have several that come out each year. I am hoping to head into another one of their anthologies or books. They also publish art with it, which is breathtaking and unique. So those would be two wonderful places to go check out my work and read some of my stories too. So I have written about my family, both new and old as well, and even have a story in there about my ex-husband. So I've thought about also writing about my dating life, but maybe we'll keep that for later.
Okay. You've definitely piqued my curiosity, that's for sure. Whenever it comes out, I'd love to read about it. So let's talk about your role as it relates to being a spokesmodel for major brands. How did you get into that? And then later you transitioned into representing those underrepresented causes.
Yes. Ooh.
Tell me about that.
Great story. When I was in high school, I was a very visible person. I did theater, I did dance, I sang, and found myself in the pageant world. I was that person. Miss Illinois Teen U.S. Beauties 2001. Nice to meet you, Drain Smiley.
Nice to meet you. Hello.
And I ended up, of course, being that visible in a top 3 market in Chicago. So I would go into Chicago and do acting classes and all sorts of things in order to help my odds participating in this very competitive space. And I ended up linking up with a woman, Miss Tony Sitka, who owned a talent management company in Chicago. And she was like, "Whoa, I need you." And as I started to do little jobs, so there were things like being a secret shopper for Burger King. One of the first jobs I had was shaving my legs for Gillette Venus. This was when the sensitive one came out. This was when it first dropped. And I went down to the state fair in Illinois in order to basically show people how it worked, right? How great a job it does. Totally wild, but absolutely worked. It's a ginormous hit now. I still use it, by the way. And as I started to get into college, that gal, who was an absolute boss, basically said to me, "Look, you're doing things here that some of the other girls aren't doing. I'm really proud of you." I think I worked with her for about a good 4 or 5 years throughout not just my college career and internship career, but also time with her. Got to work with, like big brands like Coca-Cola. She said, "Look, you're doing things that the other gals and other guys aren't doing. Number one, I'd like to put you in charge of the girls, pay you a little bit more because I know you got college bills." I was like, "Yes, please." And number two, I think it was my 3rd year of school. She said, "Look, I had a really big name reach out to me and they're doing a regional campaign for caulk. For caulk, yes, for a sealant brand."
Yeah.
For caulk.
Okay. So I did hear that correctly. Okay. All right. Okay.
I was like, what?
What?
I mean, good thing my dad was pretty handy. I knew exactly what it was. I was like, this is really random, but also General Electric, GE, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So she got me hooked up with this, right? She got me hooked up with this great opportunity. I was partnered up with this blonde from down south who was getting her MBA. And we traveled the Midwest selling caulk, right? Market research. I was out there in front of the ACE showing people how to basically make a sharp line, right? Which I can still do. I caulked my own bathroom about a
That's
month
a
ago.
skill, by the way. Some
It
people
is
that
a skill.
listening, some people
Mm-hmm.
listening may not realize that it is a skill. Yeah,
It is a skill. You've got to
yeah,
chase it, right? You've got to
yeah,
chase
yeah.
it. You got to be detail oriented,
Yep.
not too much, not too little. Oh
Right.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
great time. It was a wonderful experience. Absolutely wonderful company to work for. But I also didn't feel that passion, right? Because initially when I went off to school, I said I was going to be in broadcast. That's what I went for, guys. Outside of all of this, I said I would like to be in a place where I'm sharing information with people, big platform. And I was going to be the next Oprah. Okay.
Mm.
That was what I was going to do. So all of this
Okay.
was just background noise. Okay. Just
Okay.
opportunities to get out into the world, to travel a little bit, to leave the Midwest and connect and network with people. And so I left school. I actually got invited back to General Electric for another semester, another internship semester. And at the time, I had a very, very close friend of mine who was dancing for Disney down here in Orlando. And he invited me to, and was a referral source for me for the college program. He said, come on down here. You got to check this out. Forget whatever you're doing. You got to come do this. Now, me being a Disney fan, I was like, say less. I'm on my way. What do you mean they've got a college program? What do we do? I know. I went down and I spent like a week with him because he's like, come and check it out. He did their stage shows. He did some of their cruise lines. He got a Disney Legacy Award actually some years later because he was
Wow.
with the company for a very, very long time. And
Wow.
he invited me down for a week and said, look, come stay here and hang out. And I hung out in the house where the gal who plays Cinderella and Pocahontas lived. It was magical.
Wow. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, right. And I was like, okay, I'm coming. So, I took a job, a short stint, and I felt like this was a fantastic way to get involved or match up with like an ABC affiliate. Right. I had
Mm.
previously done a little bit of work in radio and some reporting before for a CBS affiliate, a local radio, like indie radio talk station. I thought this could be great. This could be the move. That's it. And I did. I actually ended up leaving the program early because I got a role with an ABC affiliate in Orlando
Wow.
that a previous mentor that I had when I was in college out in Champaign, Illinois, she worked there as well. So I felt like, I hear you. I hear you, universe. Let me go.
Mm.
And it was a nice little stint. I think I made it to prime time in like 6 months. Just
Wow.
right, just understanding. And this was associate producing. I wasn't reporting yet. I wasn't anchoring. But I was allowing myself to really get involved with the working of things. It was a big market, not as giant as Chicago, but it worked. And when I got there, I kind of said, gosh, I don't live and breathe news like these folks around me, right? Like I don't live and breathe news, but there's something here that I'm breathing. And I said to myself, man, I just came from a really large market and I see all of these issues going on, right? This was when red light cameras came out. I mean, there was a lot of
Mm.
fuss happening in these local newsrooms. They're super busy, they're super high achieving folks. I think I was writing 30 stories an hour. And
Wow.
granted, they weren't ginormous stories. Some of them were 5 sentences with a sound bite, and I passed it off to graphics, right? But
Mm.
yeah, there was a lot of information coming through, and I got a view of the community and the chaos in the community. And
Mm.
I was reminded of not only my own experiences of chaos or trauma, but some of the environments that I had been around just growing up outside of Chicagoland, Illinois. And I
Mm.
felt like I'm not in the right spot right now. I'm not in the right spot. It's time to move on to something else. And I decided to go back home, go back outside Chicagoland. And lo and behold, the organization that I was adopted from was hiring.
Huh.
And yeah, totally right. I wasn't even looking for that type of work. I wasn't even going to get into social services. Yes, I had a degree in sociology. It was all really to just understand the dynamics of communities, right?
Mm.
And how we grow and we change and we work together. And it turns out they were hiring, and here I was, a social worker, totally the opposite of being in sales, marketing, spokesmodeling, beauty pageants, what am I doing here? But I learned so much, and I had the opportunity to, as said in my bio, to come from as an adoptee, come from alternative family and be a part of trying to make this work for other kids. And also all of these other issues, because in foster care, it's a kitchen sink of all the things, right? It's not just a mental health organization. It's not just
Hmm.
reentry agency. It's all of those things in order to try to reunite families with one another or make sure that kiddos have an appropriate place to be in the meantime.
Mm.
Um, and about halfway through that experience, um, at the time, Illinois was getting rid of its. You could have, when I started, to preface this, when I started, Illinois did not allow LGBTQIA parents or families to foster and adopt, right? It was like a
Mm.
say nothing, that sort of
Mm.
thing. All of a sudden, the law changed. And now you had to. And at the time I was working for, it was called Catholic Charities. It got absorbed by another organization, but everybody dropped their contract. Um, a lot of the organizations said, no, we're not going to do that. And everybody dropped their contracts. A
Mm.
little organization down in mid Illinois picked up all of these contracts. And all of a sudden, this organization was going to become the third largest in the entire state. And it's a
Wow.
ginormous state. At that point, they came to me and said, Tasha, we need your skills. We've got rebranding going on. We need some more grants money. We need to remarket. We got all these things. Can you please come and do it? Come help. And I was like, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There was like a fire that was lit underneath me where I was like,
Yeah.
hey, this is going somewhere. You
Yeah.
need me? You need my skills? Okay. Okay, let's do this. And that's what I did, right? I had always been an advocate of attempting to provide more for these kids than the state
Mm.
subsidies did, than the overworked their overworked case managers could, right? How do we actually support this drowning initiative, right? And at that point, I said, okay, well, that's it. Let's get on the ground. And I was able to find some seed funding for the program. I was able
Wow.
to help with a rebrand, got out there, talked to news media outlets, brought in some more funding, um, tried to mesh up the more northern regions with the southern regions so that we were working better as a team. And of course, put a staff volunteer team together because it was, and as you know, for nonprofits, Smiley, you wear a ton of hats when you work in a nonprofit. So you're not
For
just one job,
sure.
you're three, right?
Yeah.
So I was marketing, development, grant writer, fundraiser, and still had a small caseload at the time as well for some
Wow.
families who knew me very well. And I mean, I could do the job with my hands behind my back. I had already settled them in, but to stay connected to why I was doing what I was doing. And at that point, I had success, and I said, you know what? I belong on a development team, one that doesn't exist here. Let me
Mm.
open myself up to that, which is when I landed at the homeless shelter, which is
Ah.
yeah, yeah. And they had a team kind of designed like the one I had made in my head in terms of what I felt like it would really look like to have an effective team to provide for an organization like that. And from there, it just spiraled till I found myself in a large organization, Laurie Children's Hospital in Chicago. And post divorce was like, no better time to move now than heading down to Tampa and see if I can find a large platform too. And I ended up in this place, and at that point, kind of said to myself, I have found a larger platform. However, where I was living at the time, I said, okay, I could give my kids a life similar to the one that I had, but I also saw myself moving closer into inner city Chicago, and that was not the life that I wanted for my kids as a newly single head of household for four.
Mm.
And I said, let me see if I can find kind of a smaller, more southern town and just take what I do and who I know and go build something new. And what's next is probably there. And lo and behold, here I am.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
So Tasha, a couple things stand out to me when I listen to your story, your journey. One is that you definitely don't turn down a challenge. You tend to have a extensive network and you listen to the signs, you read the tea leaves, and move in the direction that you're being called to move in. And you realize, there's that story about the guy in the boat, and God sends him a life raft. No, God. Someone else comes by, jump, I'll save you. He's in a sinking boat. And another guy comes by, and I'll save you, jump. No, God's got me. All these signs are coming his way, but he's like, for you, is these signs are coming your way. You're like, let's do it. I'm game. I'm all in.
Yes.
That's one thing that I heard in your journey. Another is that there's a sub story here, and I wonder, and you can answer this obviously. Being an adoptee, some of the things you were involved in. Do you believe that your being an adoptee helped fueled how passionate you were in helping the community in the different ways you did? So talk to me about the part you being an adoptee played in that.
Absolutely. Gosh, it's one of my favorite topics, Dre, because it's not just myself who was adopted. My adoptive mother was also adopted, left on a doorstep back after the baby boom. And I have a ton of cousins who are adopted. So I've got Korean cousins, Native American cousins, Mexican cousins. There's a whole gamut here. So it wasn't just my own adoption. It was seeing this alternate family, this community, quote unquote, being created out of nothing but, like you said, reading the tea leaves and having a sign and saying, hey, this is what it's going to be because this is where I'm at. Being an adoptee, especially, I think I grew up about 35, 40 miles outside of Chicago, right? So the burbs, suburban princess here. And a lot of the segregation that happened in inner city Chicago, right? It being so segregated, because it is, right? That these spaces, the lines just, a lot of them never crossed, even though it's 2024, that found its way out to the suburbs as well. So I was adopted interracially. So there was this whole identity crisis that you deal with. There's these issues of DEI that existed before DEI existed. And my parents deciding to even take that on, not just me as an interracial adoptee, but my younger sister, who was also interracial adoptee, and my older brother, who was interracial adoptee, non-biological, but they were totally ahead of their time, right? And just watching the struggles that we went through. I mean, I remember walking into a Wendy's. I mustn't have been any older than like 9, okay? And the gal who was up front, now why we were being seated at Wendy's in the early 90s, like there was a hostess, like this was a club. I don't know. But my memory, okay, this is a 9-year-old memory. And I remember just somebody coming, whatever they were doing, they were like, oh, hey, welcome. She must have been new. But she was trying to seat us kids separate from my parents. Okay. We were all young. And I'm thinking like, what is going on here? We were kids. And just feeling like, oh man, there's a split that's evident right up front. And watching how people manage that and the questions that people had, I was always so curious about why that's important, how we really relate to each other, what that means about what it says about us and the people that we're around. And yeah, that curiosity, it never died. And I'm glad it didn't. My father, he's a computer engineer, right? Most curious dude you'll ever meet, and was a teacher. First and foremost, that's what he was. He was a teacher. So he was a high school and computer science teacher. And during summers, he would actually go and work at Fermilab, right? He was invited to go work. So he did initial work on, as IBM was becoming Mac, he actually created the menu for the Mac operating system way back in the day, like late 60s. Okay. And he was always crazy curious. He had his degree in physics as well. So he would always say stuff like, it may be improbable, but it's not impossible. Like that's what I grew up with. Okay. On top of all of, looking different than my peers, I'd say maybe 1% of my suburb was of color, Black, Asian, any of that really. And, just having someone who always encouraged me to challenge the status quo and to ask questions. So yeah, I'd say it's a mix of being an adoptee having parents who, now looking back, were way ahead of their time. Of course, growing up was like, you guys are old, but way ahead of their time. And also growing up outside of a larger city, most of America, as you guys know, is rural, right? I mean, it is something like 70% of America is rural. And just being able to see these dynamics in play around a lot of other people gave me a really interesting vantage point and viewpoint. And, I want to be able to use that. It's almost like my own little privilege, right? Of being able to see that view from that space and take what I've learned from that and spread it. I can't hold it in, right? So I've questioned myself a ton along the way. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this work? What does the impact look like? And it was hard to see that in child welfare. It is a case management, social work. It's a very thankless job, and it should be. It's private. It's confidential. It's people's lives. But as I started to get in the world of grant writing and fundraising, and I got the opportunity to start to tell these stories, I just realized, gosh, I'm supposed to tell these stories,
Love it.
and yeah, and I don't know what that means or where it's going, but yep, like you said, Dre, I'm just reading the tea leaves and saying that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah.
Love it.
From the being an adoptee, have you ever dabbled into ancestry.com, or do you find, how does that work with the adoptee relationships and rules, and someone just hijacks it and goes find their DNA and find their biologicals? Does
Oh my
that
gosh.
happen often?
Smiley, there could be a whole other show about this, okay? If you haven't figured out now, I'm a talker. That's what I do. This is going to have to be a 3-hour morning show. Seriously, yes, I have absolutely dabbled in ancestry. I've actually found family, Smiley and Dre. So not only did I find out with my own little search as I was working at the agency, probably about a year in, my birth mother had left little notes for me. Okay, little did I know, but she had left little notes saying I knew someday you'd come looking for me. Turns out, I also found out she was very, very young. I want to say 16 at the time that she was pregnant with me, and left these little notes. It was a very hard decision, but long story short, I actually ended up inviting her two parents over to my house with my adoptive parents as an adult, somewhere around about 34, 35, to come together, and actually got a chance to meet them and introduce everybody. Not everybody has that story, okay? So that's why this
Yeah,
will be
yeah,
forever,
yeah.
because this is a totally unique story. I
Mm,
mean, my own adoptive mother was always so triggered with my curiosity around my own adoption, because she doesn't get that. She was dropped
mm.
on a doorstep in the 40s. So the small amount of information left behind for me isn't available to her. And other families sometimes don't collaborate or function as well. So it's a totally unique experience to me. But after I was connected with her, then yes, I started to have questions about my own birth father, right? Which she had a little bit of information to provide me. So there again, I had a family member who was able to say, here's what I can share, so that I could corroborate, some of the people that I might bump into on ancestry.com. I think Ancestry is an amazing tool. And since I have been on there, I have met 2 biological half brothers. I have met aunts.
Wow.
I have met a grandmother.
Wow.
I even, okay, and I'm not going to give up her name, but connected with a gal on LinkedIn who turns out we are cousins. Now, I am not 100% sure that we are just cousins, because sometimes they can be off by a few points. But I saw that we were connected on LinkedIn. I said, oh my gosh, I recognize her face. I went to my ancestry.com. Boop, she's my cousin. I reached out and said, why didn't
Wow.
you say anything?
Right.
Yes, on. Join the family. And and at that point, because I had done the lay work, right, and was able to connect with family both off and on ancestry.com, I actually had an entire family tree with pictures and names dating all the way back to the mid 1800s. We have pictures of our great grandfather from slavery. Okay,
It's
I was
incredible.
able to connect her to that and those people, and of course at her pace. But that piece of history, that story, right? I was able to share. And it was like she was crying while we were on the phone while I was telling her. And I was like, geez, it's the same reaction I had when I was able to hear some of these stories and I got to pass it on. Who would have thought that at some point I would have a piece of family history, not only as an adoptee, but a Black woman in America to pass on. So it was a privilege. And I think Ancestry is awesome. Have you guys ever tried it?
Well, just for transparency, I wasn't adopted. I was just abandoned. My biological father didn't want to do anything with my mother and me.
Yep.
But in 2020, I found my biological dad, three biological brothers, and an older biological sister who lives in Orlando. And
Whoa!
we've been inseparable ever since.
How dope is that?
I spent the last weekend was with my baby, my youngest biological brother. It was all because of Ancestry.
Yes!
And the cousin, I put it in there, and the cousin, she's like, "How are you at the top of our tree and no one knows you?" That's the first thing she said in our email.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I don't know any of you people," and it's just
like, I'm here
so
now.
that's another episode, but
Yes.
So
what an amazing journey. And it just, once you
Yeah.
open up that Pandora's box, right? That's kind of how my adopted mother, my mother explained it to me. You're going to open up Pandora's box. Darn right, I'm going to open up Pandora's box. I'm going to go swimming in it. See what's around
That's
there.
right.
Okay.
That's right.
And then
That's
I'm going
right.
to bring out buckets for other people. We're good. It's fine. We got this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's the part of the show, Tasha, that's bittersweet for us because, we always enjoy talking and meeting new people. But all good things have to transition on. So this is the final set of questions. So we have a bank of questions that we pull from. And so when I think back about what we've discussed, your journey, the question I want to ask you first, let's see here. What's the biggest risk you ever took?
I've got a couple of those.
Okay. All right.
Questions. I love this. This and trivia.
Okay.
I'm down. Let's go.
Okay.
Okay. So the biggest risk I took. Now I've taken a few, but the most recent one would be moving myself and my 3 young kiddos across country post-COVID, smack dab in the middle of inflation. It was one of those things where I had really only planned a few months out. That's all I could do. I think that's all anybody can do, right? You have a large plan, you have some goals, but you just kind of feel led to go do it. And I felt like the timing was right. If I take my older kiddos there, they have time to make friends before they hit middle or high school. And my little hasn't started yet. So look, if she starts school, she can start where she's going to end it. It's like the time is now, right? Time's now. Time to sell your house. Now, why would the universe tell me it was time to sell my house at the beginning of the bubble in 2022? But it was time. So I left before the house was even sold, guys.
Wow.
And literally sold everything but a little pod. Okay. The cheapest one that I could get. All right. And I basically told the kids, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't go. So maybe your bike doesn't come, but your bed does. So let's do this. And just said, that's it. We're putting it all there and we're meant to go and we're going to go. And the best advice I got from a friend of mine who just moved her family down to Naples a year prior said, look, you can have all sorts of thoughts about this, but truth is, if it doesn't work out, you could just go back. You're going to be okay. Like there's always another stepping stone. It'll show up right at the 11th hour when you least believe it. And so sure enough, I took off on a road trip. I kidnapped my mother from my dad. I said I might send her back in a few months or so, but she's coming with me. Okay. You want her back? You know where to find me. Right. I kidnapped her and I put her in the car and I had all 3 of the kiddos, my mom and I in a car. Now, wouldn't you know it, the car tanked on the way down somewhere within Indy, right? Like 5.5 hours in. Okay. We were like, la, 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 great trip. Boom. I start to feel like we were losing gas and there was a turnoff right there. So I got off, ended up having to replace my car in Indy. But if there's any place you want to replace your car, it's Indy. So
okay,
right. Like if there's anywhere the amount of dealerships and they were wonderful. I was like, if there's anywhere, like Thank you for killing my
Right.
transmission here. This is
This is
it.
meant to be.
This is meant to be. So
Right. I love that.
it was fantastic. It was, it was a week long road trip. It lasted a little bit longer than I thought it would, and the bigger part was getting down here.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd say the biggest risk was putting my fam in the car, selling stuff, and deciding, let's go. Let's
All
create
right.
a new life. Let's do this.
Love it.
Awesome.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Here's one. What's one thing most people don't know about you that you wish they did?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I'm glad this is part of your 4. Okay, this is a tough one. It probably doesn't come out this way in on this platform in a podcast, which this is the first one I've done, by the way, guys.
You're a
And
natural.
You're a
oh,
natural.
thanks,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it because I spend so much time talking about such serious issues, right? Social impact, change, the tough spots of communication and hard conversations. I do so much work in that space that I think the one thing that I would like people to know about me that isn't always evident is that I'm fun. I'm just fun, guys. I like to have fun. I like to go places that are fun. I need more fun in my life. Like if there's one thing that I wish people knew, right? Because right now, just getting to know even friends down here, a lot of it's work, a lot of it's school exchanges, other parents, so they don't get to see that part of me. So I'm just over here like having fun, just me with me. But I'm fun. I would like people to know that. Tell the people. Tell the
All
others.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fun.
Hear ye. Let
Hear
everyone.
ye.
Let everybody know. Okay. Next question. Let's see here. What's something that you wish you were better at?
Ooh, I know that right up front. I don't even need to take time. I wish I was more patient. Okay.
Ah.
Patience.
Okay.
I am, like you said, yes, I don't back down from challenges. I'm brave. I can even be a little bit competitive sometimes, but patience. When I am waiting on timing and I have an odd relationship, and it isn't always me allowing it. So if there was one thing that I could change, it would be patience. And it's because I know that timing does work in my favor. So I am very heavily working on my ability to be patient with people, with life, with work. I think that is something that I've been spending time on. So yeah, I wish I was better at that.
Okay. Love it.
Awesome. So the the last question is, who is the person, alive or dead, that you would trade places with for a day?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh my gosh, I already mentioned this. Oprah.
Oprah?
Hello, Oprah. Okay, and here's why.
Yeah,
Like,
why?
is it
Yeah.
kind of taboo and cliche? Like, maybe, I don't know. Or people are like, I don't want to trade places. She's got a lot to do. Yeah, she does. But the amount of people that she has had the opportunity to meet, the amount of brains that she's picked, the amount of wisdom that she has been able to intercept and translate for other people. Like, if I could just be in her body for a day, just to have her neurons and get a taste of what having all of that knowledge and information feels like, or how it changes how you move within the world. I mean, yeah, like, she's super rich. That'd be cool too.
That helps.
I know. But the
Right.
bigger part is the amount of connection she's been able to do with people, and what that looks like, and how that would translate into how I might move differently within the world, just for a day.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Tasha, I want to tell you, you are remarkable. I think the stars aligned when I just happened to pick your table to sit at. I was telling Dre, out of all of us who are on the board, we saw the tables and we were encouraged to not to sit with each other, to sit with the people who were coming.
Yeah.
And I just happened to sit at your table, and for you to honor us with you being the first podcast guest on a podcast ever. We really appreciate that. And thanks for your authenticity. Thanks for
Always.
your honesty. And And I'm eager to read your words because I wish we, like Drake said, it's bittersweet to come to an end because sometimes we have guests where we think we could talk 2, 3 hours where there's so
Yes.
many spin-off topics. So thank you again, Tasha, for being on the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. You guys were great hosts, so welcoming. I love the vibe on your show. I had an opportunity to listen to a few others before I came on to. So I appreciate and respect what you guys are doing. What you're doing takes it takes courage and a little bit of braveness there. So
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you to
yeah.
you guys for having me on. I had a great time and I did appreciate this as well.
It was a blast. Thanks again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.